Hello, and welcome to my channel. Today's story takes place in Florence, Montana. Florence is home to the Bitterroot River, a popular fly fishing river. It's considered a blue ribbon fishery, deemed by the government due to its clean water quality. Florence was the location of the Hair Gallery Beauty Salon. On the morning of November 6, 2001, around 11 a.m., a female customer walked into the salon and found a woman lying on the salon floor in a fetal position in a pool of blood near the door where the customer had entered. The woman called 911 and police arrived and entered a utility room through this door and found two more bodies. The woman who was on the floor near the door was salon owner, 62-year-old Dorothy Harris. The two women in the utility room were identified as 71-year-old Cynthia Paulus, who was a customer getting her nails done, and 44-year-old salon manicurist Brenda Patch. The customer said she saw a man outside the salon when she arrived. She described him wearing a dark suit and dark trench or top coat. He was between 20 and 30 years old and about 6 feet tall, approximately 180 to 200 pounds, wearing a hat like a top hat or fedora. The sheriff department brought in a canine dog who picked up the scent near the salon but lost it near the road, consistent with someone leaving by car. Other witnesses reported seeing a man in nearby businesses. He stood out because of the way he was dressed. Police said all three women had slashes to their necks. No weapon was found. No signs of a struggle in the area where Dorothy was found, but there did appear to be a struggle in the utility room. Nothing seemed to be missing from the salon except one salon cape. The women's purses were all undisturbed and there were no signs of sexual assault. Police processed the scene, dusting for fingerprints, collecting evidence from inside and outside the salon. The police continued processing the scene into the next day. Police believe the two women were forced in the utility room where they were attacked and that Dorothy was ambushed as she entered the salon. For days, police canvassed the neighborhood, handing out sketches of the man and asking if they had seen anything. In 2001, Florence was a town of about 1,000 people, so it was small. The sheriff admitted they needed help from the FBI to solve this case, but that had been just 2 months since the 9/11 attacks, and federal law enforcement was busy with that investigation. Meanwhile, the atmosphere in Florence was fear. People were on edge, and most of them had never locked their doors, started locking them, and making sure they had loaded weapons nearby. Business owners were on high alert for their safety. Another hair salon owner said she locked the door between customers. It was unbelievable to residents that a murder was committed in a business on busy Highway 93 in broad daylight. Within days, tips were coming into the police, but nothing concrete. Police were also checking into the unsolved murder of a 1998 18-year-old Miranda Fenner, who was murdered in a similar fashion in a video store in Laurel, Montana, which was 5 hours away. They wanted to compare evidence in that case. Saturday, November 10th, 4 days after the murder, a candlelight vigil was held for Dorothy, Cynthia, and Brenda. November 12th, 2001. Separate funeral services were held for Dorothy Harris and Cynthia Paulus. Dorothy's funeral was held at Highway Baptist Church. Cynthia's funeral was held at Daily Leach Chapel and Crematory. Her remains are placed at the Victor Cemetery. November 13th, 2002. A funeral for Brenda Patch took place at Lolo Community Church. By the end of November, a $10,000 reward was donated by the Carol Sund Carrington Memorial Foundation in hopes it would help solve the murders. I am sure you are all aware of who Carol Sund is, but just in case you don't, she and her daughter Julie Sund and Julie's friend Sylvina Peloso were murdered by Carrie Stainer while visiting Yosemite. Also, before November wrapped up, police were hoping to submit a pair of sunglasses that were found at the scene for DNA testing. The glasses did not belong to any of the women. The glasses were described as dark rimmed that were a wraparound style. Sketches were released along with sunglasses fitting the description. December 8, 2001. America's Most Wanted ran a segment on their show for leads in the hair gallery Florence Salon murders. The day after the segment aired, at least 60 tips were called into the sheriff department. January 2002 began, and the sheriff said tips were coming in daily, but they have no solid leads, but believe the person may still be in the area. Since the airing of America's Most Wanted, the tips that have come in had reached 155. February 2002, police released another sketch from a third sketch artist hoping to draw more leads. November 2002, almost a year since the murders at the salon, the case was still unsolved. The papers released a sketch and retold the story of the murders. That would be the last time the paper would publish anything about the murders until 2008. April 8, 2008, two men were charged in connection with the murder at the salon. A 31-year-old named Brian and a 33-year-old named Lincoln. At their arraignment, they were charged with 3 counts of murder while engaged in drug trafficking, conspiracy to distribute meth, distribution of meth, violent crimes, and racketeering. Police believe Brian carried out the murder and Lincoln ordered it. The motive was believed to be an unpaid drug debt. Brian had been questioned 2 weeks after the murders, but there was not enough evidence to charge him. Both of these men were currently serving time in prison on drug charges. Brian had been since 2004 and Lincoln since 2005. At this point, not much had been released on how the police connected the two men to the murders or who the target may have been. Apparently, Lincoln was the leader of a drug ring who used and violence against drug customers with unpaid debt. It was said someone related to one of the 3 women had an unpaid drug debt. November 2009, Lincoln struck a plea deal and pled guilty to drug charges. In return, the state dropped the murder charges against him. December 2009, all of the drug charges against Brian were dropped. The statute of limitation had been 5 years to charge someone, and that had expired in 2006. He was still being held on the murder charges, and the trial was to begin in March of 2010. January 2010, the murder charges against Brian were dropped. The prosecution failed to produce witnesses. Some had died, while others refused to testify. That didn't keep him out of trouble. By 2014, he was charged with distributing drugs over the course of 3 years and violence against multiple people, including family members. He was sentenced to 15 years and will be released in 2029. February 2010. Lincoln was sentenced to 20 years in prison on drug charges. He is scheduled to be released in May of 2030. As of January 2025, this case is still unsolved. It was also unrelated to the 1998 murder of Miranda Fenner. The motivation in that case was not the same. The killer was caught in 2017 and convicted in 2019. I don't know what became of the sunglasses, if they were able to extract DNA, and if it happened to be a match to Brian. It's unknown if it was related to a drug debt or who the target may have been. The local news stations still run stories on the murders and over the years have interviewed family members, locals, law enforcement, and a reporter who had covered the story since the beginning. As far as the salon, it had been remodeled and was the location of Prudential Insurance after the murders. As of 2025, it is now a marijuana dispensary. Dorothy Harris was born July 11, 1939. She married her husband in 1955. She had been a waitress and a cook before attending beauty school in the 70s. She and her husband had purchased several buildings over the years in which she ran her beauty salons out of. They also owned a motel. In 1990, they purchased what was once a post office and turned it into the hair gallery beauty salon. She was said to light up a room. She loved painting, crafting, sewing. She was a wife, mother, grandmother, and great grandmother. Cynthia Paulus was born July 7th, 1930. She loved fishing, golfing, horseback riding, and was a huge fan of the Montana Grizzlies women's basketball team. She was described as having a huge heart and loved having big family gatherings. She was a wife, mother, a stepmother, a grandmother, and a great grandmother. Brenda Patch was born September 7th, 1957. She loved her job and spending time with her clients. She loved her family and dogs and watching the sunrise. She was said to love unconditionally. Her hobbies included ceramics, plants, and aquatic gardens. She was a wife, mother, and grandmother. May they all be at peace, and hopefully someday soon their murders get solved. Thank you for listening, and I will catch you on the next video.